Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Darshan Usman. Here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news in Europe, where a United States federal judge has accepted a plea deal for Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. Now, he pleaded guilty to a single count of conspiracy to obtain and disseminate national defense information. According to the agreement, Assange will not face further jail time, and the judge has indicated that he will be a free man, bringing an end to a years-long legal battle. Assange had been wanted by the U.S. government for his role in revealing military secrets through WikiLeaks. The plea deal marks a significant development in the case, which has garnered international attention and sparked debates about freedom of the press and the government's secrecy.
Prosecution of Julian Assange is unprecedented. In the 100 years of the Espionage Act, it has never been used by the United States to pursue a publisher, a journalist like Mr. Assange. Mr. Assange revealed truthful, important, and newsworthy information, including revealing that the United States had committed war crimes, and he has suffered tremendously in his fight for free speech, for freedom of the press, and to ensure that the American public and the world community gets truthful and important newsworthy information. We firmly believe that Mr. Assange never should have been charged under the Espionage Act and engaged in exercise that journalists engage in every day, and we're thankful that they do. It is appropriate, though, for this fight to end, and it is appropriate for the judge, as she did today, to determine that no additional incarceration of Mr. Assange would be fair, would be appropriate, and it is time for it to be reunited.
In the same vein, Julian Assange has landed back home in his native Australia after a plea deal allowed him to walk free from a London prison. There were emotional scenes at Canberra airport as the WikiLeaks founder kissed his wife and hugged his father, his lawyers watching on visibly moved. Stella Assange said at a news conference shortly after her husband arrived that Julian Assange needs privacy and time to recover after more than 5 years in a high-security London prison. The plea deal saw Julian plead guilty to one charge of conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defense information rather than the 18 he was originally facing.
Julian wanted me to sincerely thank everyone. He wanted to be here. But you have to understand what he's been through. He needs time. He needs to recuperate. And this is a process. I ask you, please, to give us space, to give us privacy.
For more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Hello, Afia. Now, it's been a long 13 years of legal wrangling, for Julian Assange. Can you give us a timeline of how we got to, today when he has been freed?
You're absolutely right. 13 years that Julian Assange has been locked in this legal battle, and it all started in 2006 when Julian Assange co-founded WikiLeaks, and he described that as a web-based dead letterbox for would-be leakers to send information, for whistleblowers, for people who wanted to expose huge companies, or in his case, the US government. He faced legal wrangling after that, including being arrested in London because of the document dumps that he had on there. So there was the footage of the US helicopter firing on civilians in 2010 that really sparked that legal battle. And of course, he was also accused in Sweden of rape and sexual assault. In 2012, he took a refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and he was there for 7 years. In fact, until April 2019, when the Metropolitan Police entered the embassy under the Ecuadorian government's permission and detained Julian Assange for failing to surrender to the court. Then from May 2019, he was in Belmarsh prison. Now, during the time, there was still the legal battle over those sexual assault claims in Sweden. They were eventually dropped against him, and the Swedish prosecutors discontinued that investigation. But then in 2021, became the threat that he would be extradited to the US. In 2022, the UK government signed off on that extradition. Appeals went through. The most recent one, which was the final one actually, was in February 2024. And in May last month as well, the High Court said that a new appeal could be brought against his extradition to the US. And then all of a sudden we had this plea deal. Now, the plea deal was actually signed on the 19th of June this month, so just last week. Julian Assange left the UK on the 24th of June. And we only found out actually that this plea deal had been signed and that he had left the United Kingdom once he was actually in the air and had left Stansted Airport for that municipality off the coast of the US and Australia before he is finally landed back in his home country of Canberra today.
All right, so his wife, Stella Assange, has been speaking to the media, mostly about, how her husband needs privacy now that he's actually home. But aside that, what else has she said?
No, you're absolutely right. We saw Stella Assange's wife speaking earlier on this evening, clearly, visibly very emotional at the fact that Julian Assange has been released. Now, yesterday, she gave only one interview to BBC Radio 4 here in the United Kingdom, and she was quite limited in what she could say and how this plea deal came about. But she said that she thinks it's because the UK court recognised that Julian Assange would have those protections as a journalist to be able to release the data that he did. She implied that that's what the UK court saw and what made them change their mind. And therefore they were able to work towards this plea deal along with the US and the Australian government, who have been very instrumental in this, of course. Now, she also said that she cannot say too much at the moment, which is why the statement you saw her giving in Canberra was much more about why Julian wasn't at that press conference himself. She said that he needs time. He does have some health issues that he needs to attend to as well. And of course, we will hear from him in due course. And from her also, she has a pretty incredible story too. They have two children who were fathered in secret while he was at the Ecuadorian embassy. She married him at Belmarsh prison wearing a Vivienne Westwood dress in 2022. So both of them do have a lot to say, and I'm sure that will be said in due course. But the statement that she gave was more focused on why Julian wasn't at that press conference and less details on how this deal actually came to pass. And I think that's something that we'll find out in the coming weeks.
Okay. Now that he's back home and his plea deal has actually been granted, what's next for Julian?
Well, the priority for him is to get his health in order. Like I said, he does have a few health issues and he will be attending to them, spending time with family. There's also the thought that he may seek a full pardon. So that one charge of guilty that he did plead to, he may seek a full pardon for that, to be completely exonerated. That's something that him and his wife and his legal team obviously could pursue going forward. Now, in 2023, Julian Assange said that WikiLeaks is no longer able to publish because of his imprisonment and the effect that the US government surveillance and WikiLeaks funding restrictions were having on people being able to use the site and being able to whistleblow in the way that they wanted. Now, we might see WikiLeaks return now that its publisher and, its main journalist is freed. Perhaps, we don't know this for certain, but perhaps we may see WikiLeaks being a resurgence. It may be revived. It may get some funding. It may come back and be a place, this dead letterbox, as he described it, for people to send whistleblowing documents. But I think in the immediacy, what will be on Julian Assange's mind is getting healthy, getting better, spending time with his family, and then perhaps pursuing that pardon.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Afia, for that update. Away from that, let's also tell you that the trial of U.S. journalist Evan Gershkovich has begun behind closed doors. The Wall Street Journal correspondent is facing espionage charges, which he, his employer, and the White House vehemently deny. Gershkovich was arrested 15 months ago while on a reporting trip in Yekaterinburg, becoming the first Western journalist to be detained on spying charges in Russia since the Cold War. Russian prosecutors claim Gershkovich was working for the CIA and gathering secret information on a major Russian tank manufacturer. The trial has sparked international concern, with many calling for Gershkovich's release and an end to the crackdown on press freedom in Russia. We will continue to follow this story and bring you updates as more information becomes available.
Следствием установлено и документально подтверждено, что американский журналист газеты The Wall Street Journal Эван Гершкович в марте 2023 года по заданию ЦРУ собирал секретные сведения на территории Свердловской области о деятельности оборонного предприятия по выпуску и ремонту военной техники. Незаконные действия Гершкович совершал с соблюдением тщательных мер конспирации. Предварительное расследование проведено Следственным управлением ФСБ России.
United States President Joe Biden has pardoned thousands of veterans who over 6 decades ago were convicted of crimes under a military law that banned gay sex. The veterans were convicted under a provision of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which criminalized sodomy from 1951 to 2013. However, that part of the provision was repealed by the U.S. Congress at that time. In a statement on Wednesday, Biden described the move as righting an historic wrong Biden said was using his clemency authority to pardon many former service members who were convicted simply for being themselves. Still in Europe, NATO on Wednesday appointed Mark Rutte as its next Secretary General, putting the outgoing Dutch Prime Minister in charge of the world's biggest security organization at a critical time for European security as war rages on in Ukraine. Rutte's appointment was sealed by NATO ambassadors during a meeting at the 32-nation alliance's headquarters in Brussels. United States President Joe Biden and his counterparts will formally welcome him to their table at a summit in Washington on July 9th to 11th. The outgoing Dutch premier will take over from the current Secretary General, Norway's Jens Stoltenberg, on October 1st. Stoltenberg spent more than a decade at the helm. His mandate was repeatedly extended in part to provide continuity after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan warns that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's agenda could result in a great disaster in the Middle East, urging Islamic nations to take action ahead of Western powers. While speaking at the parliamentary group meeting of the Justice and Development Party, AKP, Erdogan says Netanyahu's plans to spread the war to the region with the consent of the West will lead to a great disaster.
Lafa gelince özgürlükten, insan hakları ve adaletten dem vuran devletlerin Netanyahu gibi bir ruh hastasının esiri olmaları son derece vahimdir, zavallılıktır. Netanyahu'nun Batı'nın da rızasıyla savaşı bölgeye yayma planları, açık söylüyorum, büyük bir felakete yol açacaktır. Bu kanlı planlara karşı Batı'dan önce İslam alemi ve Orta Doğu'daki kardeş ülkelerin tepki göstermesi gerekir. Fakat İslam dünyasının üzerine ölü toprağı serpilmiş gibi hareket ettiğini üzülerek müşahede ediyoruz. Türkiye, kardeş Lübnan halkının ve devletinin yanındadır. Bölgedeki diğer ülkeleri de Lübnan'la dayanışma içinde olmaya davet ediyoruz.
Beyond the Continent returns after the break. Do stay. Welcome back. Still in Europe, Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser says the government has agreed on measures making it easier to deport foreigners who glorify acts of terror after a surge in online hate posts during the Gaza war. According to a draft law agreed by the German cabinet, under the new rules, foreigners could face deportation for social media comments that glorify or condone a single terrorist act.
Ganz klar, islamistische Hetzer, die geistig in der Steinzeit leben, haben in unserem Land nichts zu suchen. Wer keinen deutschen Pass hat und hier terroristische Taten verherrlicht, der muss, wo immer möglich, ausgewiesen und abgeschoben werden. Dazu schaffen wir jetzt eine neue rechtliche Grundlage. Ich bin sehr zuversichtlich, dass die Koalitionsfraktionen diese Gesetzesänderungen schnell beraten und auch beschließen werden.
Let's head to the Middle East, where Israeli government spokesperson David Mensa on Wednesday accused Fadi al-Wadiya, an employee of medical charity Doctors Without Borders, who was killed in an Israeli air raid in Gaza, of being a significant Islamic Jihad operative. Now, the Israel Defense Forces had on Tuesday announced that the Israeli Air Force had eliminated Fadi al-Wadiya, whom it identified as a senior Islamic Jihad official responsible for directing rocket attacks against Israeli civilians. Meanwhile, witnesses have confirmed that fighting is still raging between Israeli troops and Palestinian militants in Gaza's southern city of Rafah as fears grow of a wider regional war drawing in Lebanese Hamas's ally, Hezbollah.
That Fadi al-Wadiya, a significant Islamic Jihad operative, was also eliminated. Médecins Sans Frontières said that he was a dear physiotherapist colleague. MSF were happy to overlook, it seems, that he also developed and advanced Islamic Jihad's rocket array with his knowledge of electronics and chemistry.
The outgoing United Nations humanitarian chief warned on Wednesday that the spread of the Israel-Hamas war to Lebanon would be potentially apocalyptic as fighting raged on in the southern Gaza Strip. UN emergency relief official Martin Griffiths, in a statement that witnesses reported intense fighting between Israeli troops and Palestinian militants in Gaza's southern city of Rafah amidst growing fears of a wider regional war, accusing Western powers of backing Israel as it sets its sights on Lebanon, seeking to spread the war to the region. With the conflict nearing its 10th month, Israel's top ally, the United States, warned of the risk of a major conflict with Hezbollah following an escalation in threats after months of cross-border fire.
Every family. And we consider the American people as our family. Disagreement may arise, yet, like all families, we discuss our disagreements in-house and remain united. Looking at the future, we stand firmly behind the President's deal, which Israel has accepted, and now Hamas must accept or bear the consequences. But let it be known that our war is not with the people of Gaza. Our war is not with the people of Lebanon. Our war is against Hamas, against Hezbollah, and their backers, the Iranian regime. We are committed, and I am personally committed, to facilitating the delivery of essential humanitarian aid to Gaza. We only fight those who seek to harm us.
In North America, thousands of protesters gathered outside a Manhattan federal court in New York demanding justice as former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez awaits sentencing for his March 8th conviction on drug and arms trafficking charges. Juan Orlando Hernandez potentially faces a life sentence. Recall that 55-year-old Hernandez was found guilty of drug trafficking conspiracy by a U.S. jury, cementing the one-time U.S. allies' fall from grace. During Hernandez's presidency, which ran from 2014 to 2022, the Central American country received more than $50 million in anti-narcotics assistance and tens of millions of dollars in security and military aid.
Hay un millón de cosas que durante la administración de ese criminal se dieron. Y la última que tenemos ahorita, una gran crisis social que siempre se la echamos al partido que está en la administración. Justicia, justicia para el pueblo hondureño, para la juventud que cayó durante la administración de esos corruptos y que tienen un poder grande todavía. Sí, me gustaría que se aplicara la fórmula que le dieron al hermano de él, que por 180 toneladas le dieron cadena perpetua más 30. Entonces a él le deberían de tocar 3 más 90, según la fórmula.
In South America, Argentina's justice system on Wednesday opened the trial for the attempted murder of former Vice President Cristina Kirchner in 2022 when a man fired a gun inches away from Kirchner's face in a failed assassination that shocked society and broke a political boundary. The trial focuses on the 3 defendants, the attackers, his ex-girlfriend and their employers as street vendors without addressing alleged ideologues or possible financial support, clues that former President Kirchner asks to be investigated and that are part of a parallel course. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for